For decades, millions of people in Connecticut woke up, checked the skies, and waited for one particular voice to tell them what the day would bring. But, on a quiet Tuesday night, that voice suddenly went silent, leaving an entire community stunned. Because behind the calm smile, the sharp forecasts, and the friendly on-air charm, Geoff Fox had been fighting a battle far more intense than any storm he ever tracked. And while many viewers thought they knew his story, what happened in his final years, and the unexpected turns he faced along the way, reveal a side of his life most people never saw coming. Long before social media weather alerts and phone apps took over, people in Connecticut relied on one person to guide them through every storm, every heat wave, and every unexpected shift in the sky. For nearly 3 decades, Geoff Fox wasn't just a familiar face on television. He became part of the daily rhythm of life. Viewers trusted him in a way that didn't happen often in local news. When the winds started howling or the snow seemed endless, people didn't panic. They simply waited for Geoff to explain what was happening, because he had a way of turning chaos into something clear and manageable. His calm voice never cracked, not even during the moments that would become part of New England history. Hurricane Gloria in '85, Hurricane Bob in '91, the blizzard of '93. Whenever the weather turned dangerous, he turned focused. There was something steady about him, something reassuring, like he understood the storm on a personal level and could translate its language for everyone watching. And even in the middle of the worst conditions, he still found room for humor, a small joke or quick smile that made people feel like everything would be okay. Over time, he became more than a meteorologist. He became the guy families watched together, the one kids imitated when they pretended to give the weather, the one neighbors mentioned on their porches after a long night of lightning and wind. In homes across the state, Geoff Fox was simply the weather. But as unforgettable as those years were, they were only the beginning. Because the path that led him to that level of trust and the challenges he would eventually face reveal a far deeper story than anyone realized. Long before Geoff Fox ever stepped in front of a weather map, he was a kid in New York City who couldn't stop asking questions. He grew up surrounded by noise, movement, and constant change, the kind of environment that forces you to pay attention to the world around you. At Brooklyn Technical High School, he wasn't just another student. He was the kind of person who wanted to understand how things worked, why they worked, and what made them behave the way they did. That curiosity never left him. His first steps into broadcasting didn't happen on TV. They happened on radio stations up and down the East Coast, where he learned how to use his voice to keep people listening. Radio demanded clarity and personality, and he mastered both. That early experience taught him something that would become his trademark years later: the ability to explain complicated things in a way that felt simple and natural. Eventually, television came calling. His first real break was a hosting job on Evening Magazine in Buffalo, a national show that relied on local hosts to bring charm and energy to everyday stories. And Geoff fit right in. One day he'd be exploring a farm, the next he'd be interviewing someone at a racetrack. No script, no teleprompter crutch, just his natural ability to connect with whoever was in front of him. It was during these years that he discovered what viewers responded to most: honesty, warmth, and genuine curiosity. He wasn't trying to be a polished TV personality. He was just himself, and people noticed. That mix of intelligence and approachability would eventually lead him to the biggest chapter of his career, but the move to Connecticut, that would change everything. By the time Geoff Fox arrived in Connecticut in 1984, he wasn't just another guy pointing at maps. He was someone who understood how to make weather feel personal. WTNH brought him in expecting a solid meteorologist. What they got instead was a personality who could take over a room, guide an entire state through a storm, and make people actually enjoy learning about cold fronts and pressure systems. It didn't take long for viewers to realize he was different. He wasn't stiff. He wasn't overly dramatic, and he never tried to talk above anyone's head. When severe weather rolled in, he broke it down with the same calm confidence you'd expect from a pilot explaining turbulence. And when the weather was quiet, he kept things light. A quick joke, a warm smile, a relatable comment that made people feel like they knew him personally. His work didn't just resonate locally. Because of WTNH's proximity to ABC's headquarters in New York, Geoff occasionally stepped onto the national stage, filling in on Good Morning America and bringing that same easygoing charm to millions of viewers who had never heard of him before. He handled the spotlight the same way he handled everything else, naturally, without trying harder to impress anyone. Behind the scenes, he kept pushing himself. He earned a broadcast seal from the American Meteorological Society and completed certification in broadcast meteorology, proving he was more than a charismatic presenter. He was a genuine expert. But what mattered most wasn't the titles or accolades. It was the bond he built with the community. For nearly 30 years, he became a fixture in living rooms across Connecticut, the kind of figure people trusted without hesitation. But fame, even local fame, comes with its own challenges. And as the years went on, his career began to shift in ways no one expected, leading to a chapter that would test everything he'd built. For nearly 3 decades, Geoff Fox felt like an unshakable part of Connecticut's identity. That's why the changes that hit his career in the 2000s startled so many people. After years of loyal service at WTNH, the station chose not to renew his contract in 2011. The decision wasn't dramatic on the surface, but for viewers who had grown up with him, it felt like the end of an era. People wrote messages, sent letters, and wondered what had really happened behind the scenes. But Geoff kept moving, refusing to slip into bitterness or self-pity. Not long after, he joined Fox 61, bringing the same familiar energy to the 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. newscasts. And at first, it seemed like a smooth transition. He still connected with audiences, still broke down storms with clarity, still had that humor that made bad weather feel a little less heavy, but then everything shifted again. A private situation between Geoff and a co-worker surfaced, a lapse in judgment involving personal messages that were never meant to go public. The incident quickly became a workplace issue, and the station decided to part ways with him. Geoff didn't deny anything. He didn't hide behind excuses. He openly acknowledged what happened, apologized to his family, and apologized to viewers who felt disappointed. It was a deeply human moment, the kind that reminds people that even the most trusted public figures have flaws and missteps. For some, this could have been the final chapter. A moment like that can end a broadcasting career permanently. But Geoff wasn't someone who disappeared after a setback. Instead, he stepped away from the spotlight, regrouped, and quietly rebuilt his life in a completely new direction. What came next showed a level of resilience that very few people knew he had, a determination that would matter more than ever as the next chapter of his life unfolded. After the turbulence in Connecticut, most people would have stepped back quietly and faded from broadcasting altogether. But Geoff Fox wasn't wired that way. Instead of trying to reclaim his old position or chase the same spotlight, he packed up his life, moved with his wife Helene to California, and started building something entirely new from the ground up. At first, he took a brief on-air role at KMIR in Palm Springs, but he quickly realized he didn't need a traditional studio to keep doing what he loved. So he did something almost no one in local news was doing at the time. He transformed his garage into a full broadcast center. Cameras, lights, monitors, weather systems, the kind of setup engineers would usually design. He built himself. And suddenly, from a quiet home thousands of miles from Connecticut, he was forecasting for stations across the country. He didn't treat it like a backup plan. He treated it like an evolution. On Facebook, he'd show viewers the wires, the software, the behind-the-scenes magic of how he brought weather reports to life from his own home. It made him feel connected again, almost like he'd recreated the community he once had on TV. And fans followed him, commented, asked questions, and kept up with him long after he'd left their local screens. His dog, Lucy, often wandered into the studio during broadcasts, or sat at his feet while he filmed. Those little moments, the unplanned, unscripted parts, made people feel like they were visiting an old friend instead of watching a polished TV segment. And for a while, this new chapter felt peaceful. No major controversies, no corporate pressure, just Geoff, his passion for weather, and a digital audience that still cared. He even returned to WTNH briefly for a summer stint in 2017, this time broadcasting remotely from California. Viewers welcomed him back instantly, proof that the bond he'd built was still strong. But even as life seemed to settle, something else was beginning beneath the surface. Something far more serious than any storm he'd ever tracked. And within a few years, that unseen threat would change everything in ways no one, not even Geoff, could have prepared for. In 2016, something happened that would change everything. Geoff Fox was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. For someone whose life had always revolved around forecasting storms and pressure systems, the diagnosis came like a storm of another kind. Silent, relentless, and impossible to ignore. What made it even more astonishing was how long he fought. Pancreatic cancer often moves quickly, but Geoff defied the odds. He underwent aggressive treatment, invasive surgery, rounds of chemotherapy, and radiation. He even once said he thought he was going to die, not as a dramatic soundbite, but as a deeply honest acknowledgement of how frightening those days were. He told a local news outlet that there were times when all he could think was, "My life is pretty good," even as he lay in hospitals and recovery rooms. That gratitude, that paradox of fear and appreciation, became central to his story. In 2017, there was hope. After surgery and treatment, doctors told him there was no evidence of disease. For a while, it felt like he'd beaten it. But with cancer, beating it doesn't always mean it's gone forever. Geoff knew that. Still, he shared his journey openly. On his Facebook page, he talked about the operations, the side effects, the long days of recovery, and he never hid the fact that it began to change him. He often reflected on how the experience had reshaped his perspective. Facing mortality wasn't just scary, it was clarifying. He admitted that, confronting death, he realized how much he loved his life, how much he loved the connection he had with his audience and his family. Even when things were darkest, he found light in the little things. Being home, recording from his studio, hearing from people who told him their days felt brighter because of him. But the cancer wasn't done. In September 2025, he announced that it had returned. This time, he chose to stop active treatment and moved into at-home hospice care. It wasn't surrender so much as acceptance, accepting that some battles can't be won forever, but choosing to face the end on his own terms. He shared his decision with his community, letting viewers in on what he was going through, how he felt, and what he hoped would come next. Through it all, he remained surprisingly strong, even fragile in his honesty. His last posts revealed a man who was tired, weak, but largely pain-free. Someone who seemed more at peace than many would expect. Geoff Fox spent the final stretch of his life the way he had spent much of his career, explaining, connecting, acknowledging the power of nature and the fragility of life. In the last months of his life, Geoff Fox did something rare for someone facing a private battle. He stayed present for the people who had always supported him. Even as the treatments became harder, even as his energy faded, he continued posting updates, answering comments, and sharing small pieces of his day, not with drama. Not for sympathy, but because he believed his viewers deserved honesty. He wanted people to understand what pancreatic cancer really was. Not the sanitized version, but the real fight. Some days he shared medical updates. Other days he talked about the weather, technology, or his dog as if nothing had changed. It was his way of reminding people, I'm still me. What stood out most was his gratitude. He thanked viewers for decades of loyalty. He thanked colleagues who had supported him through every chapter, and he thanked the strangers, thousands of them, who left messages that kept his spirits up when he didn't have the strength to say much. As the illness progressed, his posts became shorter, but the message didn't. Appreciate the ordinary moments, hold your loved ones close, and never take time for granted. It wasn't a dramatic sign-off. It was a gentle reminder from someone who had spent his life helping others prepare for storms, now facing the hardest one of his own. When Geoff Fox passed, it wasn't just Connecticut that mourned him. It was anyone who had ever turned on the news and felt like the person on the screen wasn't just talking at them, but to them. And in his final months, that connection, that bond he built over decades, became the very thing that helped carry him through. When the news of Geoff Fox's passing spread, the reaction was immediate and heartfelt. Across Connecticut and beyond, people shared memories, stories, and simple messages of thanks. He wasn't just a meteorologist. For many, he was a comforting presence in homes, a trusted guide through snowstorms, hurricanes, and the unpredictability of life itself. His legacy wasn't measured in ratings or awards, though he had plenty of both. It was in the way he made weather relatable, how he took complex systems and explained them with clarity, humor, and warmth. It was in the way he treated viewers like friends, not an audience, a rare gift in the fast-paced world of television. Even brief encounters with strangers, at diners, gas stations, or neighborhood events, left people feeling seen, appreciated, and remembered. Beyond his professional impact, there was the story of resilience. Nearly a decade-long battle with pancreatic cancer showed strength, honesty, and grace under pressure. Geoff didn't shy away from sharing his struggle, reminding everyone that even the strongest people face storms they cannot control. His willingness to be vulnerable, yet maintain hope and connection, left an emotional imprint that went far deeper than any forecast. He is survived by his wife, Helene, and daughter, Steph, who will carry forward his memory in the quiet, everyday ways he cherished. Friends, colleagues, and fans alike will remember not just the meteorologist who defined Connecticut weather, but the man whose life, full of challenges, reinventions, and unwavering dedication, touched so many hearts. And, in the end, that is the measure of Geoff Fox's impact. A life lived openly, fully, and with a bond that endured far beyond the television screen. Geoff Fox's story is more than a career in television or a life spent forecasting storms. It's a story of connection, resilience, and the quiet ways one person can shape the lives of countless others, from his early days in New York, through decades of guiding Connecticut through hurricanes, blizzards, and everyday forecasts. He became more than a familiar face. He became part of the community itself. Even when setbacks and controversy came, he didn't retreat into bitterness. He reinvented himself, built a new life on the West Coast, and continued to share his knowledge and passion with viewers across the country. And when the toughest battle of his life arrived, a nearly decade-long fight with pancreatic cancer, he faced it with honesty, courage, and gratitude, teaching those who followed him what it means to value every moment. In the end, Geoff Fox leaves behind a legacy far larger than any forecast. He leaves lessons about humanity, empathy, and perseverance, memories of humor and warmth, and a reminder that the people who touch our lives often do so in ways we only understand fully when they're gone. His story isn't just about the weather. It's about life, connection, and the extraordinary impact of one man who loved what he did and the people who watched him do it.